Coming up on this episode of Hey Friends, we need to be intentional in everything, but particularly in friendship, of not just kind of assuming that the narratives or the beliefs that we've picked up are the right beliefs.
It's not going to happen if you don't put time into it.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen if you don't schedule on your calendar.
Yeah. But buying into the belief that, man, this if this person was a really good friend, it wouldn't require much from me, I feel like that's just pure selfishness.
Oh,
You're saying
if there's no conflict in your friendships, one of you is hiding something, or you guys are not real friends.
Yeah.
Hey friends, welcome back to the Hey Friend podcast. Like I always say, it's so awesome to have you here, or it's a pleasure
awesome
to have you here for listening to our podcast. Two guys just talking about friendships and Jesus. So we love this. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to do this too. So
yeah, it's fun.
What are we talking about today?
What are we talking about today?
Yeah.
Nobody knows. No, we know. We know.
Yeah.
We pre-plan this every time. So here's the reality. In the modern world, especially as an adult, friendship can be difficult. It can be difficult to make new friends. It can be difficult to find time to hang out with the friends you have, even if you have really close friends. I feel like it seems like it's a constant struggle to find like a satisfying, fulfilling level of connection and time and depth with friends. Would you agree?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
So just as evidence of this is not just Lucas and I feeling this way. And I've had several conversations with friends locally here where we're at in the Fargo-Moorhead area who have expressed similar sentiments. There's also a slew of articles. These are all from within the last 2 years. I'm going to list just 4 or 5 of these. I could have listed probably like a dozen or more from significant media outlets. So all this just to say, man, this is an issue that is being felt across the board in the Western world. So Time Magazine, I didn't put the dates on my notes here, but I think this was last year, came up with an article titled How to Make Friends as an Adult and Why It's Important. The Atlantic has an article that says Why Making Friends in Midlife is So Hard. Self Magazine had a very handy guide called The Grown-Ass Man's Guide to Making and Keeping Friends. Business Insider has an article out there called America is Facing a Fringe Friend Crisis, talking about the idea that people tend to not have as many casual relationships as we used to historically. The Guardian in the UK has several articles on the topic of loneliness. This one titled Loneliness, Coping with the Gap Where Friends Used to Be. And like I said, I could list a dozen or so more of those. Friendship is hard, right? And it feels like it's harder than ever. I know that's my sense. I know it was much easier when I was in college, pre-kids, or in high school, where you kind of just have some things built into your life where you're around people. Therefore, you kind of have friends just by association. So there's a lot of ways we could kind of come at this issue of addressing, the reality that friendship is hard. How do we solve that? There's the societal issues, there's economic issues, there's schedule issues. But what we wanted to actually tackle in this episode is talk about what are some of the limiting beliefs or the lies that we kind of have taken on unintentionally in regards to what we believe about what friendship is, how it should work, and address those. Because I think even if we don't address those things, that we're not going to be prepared to navigate the reality of friendship in the modern world as adults. So I talked a lot. You got anything to add to that, Lucas?
People are alone, and we live in a world that we're all so well connected, but we're at the same time, we're so alone. So the thing that I keep going back to, even the meaning of friendship,
Yeah.
forget, casual friends isn't enough. So, but there's this, it's so easy to believe when someone that's closer to you, someone that's next to you says, I don't have the time. The kids are crazy. The schedule is crazy. Work has been busy. I just want to rest tonight. I don't want to do anything. I don't, it's easy. That's so easy to understand because I've felt like that. I felt like, man, I just want to rest. I don't want to go out. I don't want to do nothing,
Yeah. I was literally just before we hit record on this, I was flipping through a social media page, and it was like me. It was a meme that was like me. I wish I had more time, spent more time with my friends, and then also me. And it was a picture of a person like also me every time I get invited to do something. I think is what it said. And there was a person laying on the couch with a bunch of snacks, watching a movie by themselves. I was like, man, that is the reality, right? We're like, oh man, it's so hard to have friendships. But when the opportunity arises, it's a lot easier to keep to ourselves, sit at home, and do nothing.
One of the things we like to say is go first.
Yeah.
Like, if we live in a world that everyone's going first to serve each other, to love each other, to forgive each other, man, we look a lot more like Jesus, you know, when we do that. So, like, but sometimes us being tired, sometimes us just want to be alone. Sometimes, and I'm saying sometimes, I'm not saying all the time. There was time of Jesus took time to isolate, you know.
Yeah. There's times that's right to be alone.
Yeah. But there's most of the time, I think, just us trying to be alone is not helping us at all. You know?
Yeah.
Where like it can act as, or it can translate to of us hurting alone too. Or us celebrating alone, like we always say though too. So like just because you don't and also I think it's I don't know if this is a lazy issue, or I don't know if it's a pride issue. I don't know if it's a selfish issue. I think it's more of like, I can be selfish sometimes, and that's the easiest way to be selfish. Of like, I just want to be alone. I don't want to do anything. I don't want to hang out with you. I don't want to see you. I can do that.
Yeah, it's the reality is it's more work to interact with another person than it is to sit and watch a movie or to play video games or to do whatever. Or
but
to
why
hang out with your dog or whatever?
Yeah, but why? Why is it? And I think like anything that's rewarding is always hard.
Yeah.
Anything that's rewarding.
Yeah.
It's always hard. And as we grow, it was a lot easier to hang out with friends when I went to school.
Yes.
Because they were always right there.
Yeah.
But it's a lot harder to hang out with friends that when I'm a grown adult working, have a house, taking care of things. It's a lot more harder, right?
Totally. You add in kids for those who are married or have kids. That adds another layer of here's additional things that are weighing on me that make it, more work to go and initiate. So here's the first lie I think that we tend to buy into when it comes to friendship is that a good friendship should just happen. Like if I'm destined to be friends with someone, it should just kind of magically happen. Which is, the reality is that's what happens when you're a kid. Oftentimes, is like you said, you're at school, you sit next to each other, or you're on a sports team and you do all these things together, and you kind of just, we have these common interests, or we're close to each other. We start talking, and it just kind of happens. And you have these really up until you graduate college, if you go to college, or if you don't go to college, up until you graduate high school. Oftentimes, you have those relationships kind of pre-installed by virtue of the fact that your parents are taking you to school or you're going to class, and you have those relationships there. But the reality is when you become an adult, when you enter the workforce, get married, have kids, or navigating a schedule, those spaces where you're just going to kind of stumble into friendship are almost non-existent.
So it's not going to happen if you don't put time into it.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen if you don't schedule on your calendar.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen if you decide to, hey, you know what? I know I want to be alone, but I know that if I spend time with this friend, I can be encouraged. I can, just bring things to light that I'm hurting with, or even just laugh with them to help me forget about all these things that I have to do, or see something that I don't see. They can look at my blind spots. They're like, hey, I think you're being hard on yourself, like maybe, but that doesn't just happen. That
totally
means, hey, I'm going to take the time out of my own time. I'm going to take the time, go on a walk with you, get coffee with you, hang out with you, watch a movie with you, whatever that is. I'm going to take the time to do that because I care for you, and I know that you care for me, though, too.
Yeah. And not only the time, but also I think one of the bigger barriers, time's an issue, but I think equally as big of a barrier as time is to the engaging, and particularly I'm thinking about like making new friends or going deeper with a friend. That's not going to just happen because you also there's also emotional risk involved in putting yourself out there. Right. There's plenty of, you can scroll through my wife, like on her Instagram account, will get all sorts of, she's flipping through reels or whatever. She'll get plenty of things that are kind of like, funny reels about moms and the awkwardness of initiating friendship with other moms. And I mean, that's just the reality is when you're a kid, you're much less self-conscious, than you are as an adult, because you have you've taken on fewer of the, expectations of the world, Lord willing. But as an adult, we're more conscious of those things, and there's more propriety and things that we have in place. So it feels more risky to kind of step out of your comfort zone and try to initiate a relationship. So we need to, like we were saying earlier, you need to go first, man. Like good friendship is not going to just happen. And if you believe that, you're just going to sit there being like, where are all my good friends?
Yeah. You don't need to fear, because your ultimate friend is Jesus. Yeah. He's the, it is scary sometimes. You let someone in and they do something that is not helpful. They do something that you told them something that was really close to you, and they started sharing it. Like, those things does happen. And I'm sorry if that's happened to you, but don't let that thing stop you.
Yeah.
Don't let the fear of like, hey, I'm an awkward person. I can't just go up to anyone, but man, you never know.
Mm-hmm.
Having friends is a gift, and we were not created to be alone. So
Yeah. And I mean, I think the truth is, if the lie is a good friendship should just happen, the truth is that real friendship takes intentionality. Mm-hmm. If you want to develop some real friends, man, you need to initiate, you need to pursue. And look, this is exactly, we talk pretty frequently on here as looking to Jesus as the kind of prime example of how do you navigate friendship. And right, Jesus doesn't sit back and wait for humanity who is stuck in sin to initiate friendship with him. Right, John 3:16, God so loved the world that he sends his son. God takes the initiative and pursues people and says, I want a relationship with you. And I think if you are a follower of Jesus, you're called to do that same thing, is to get out of your comfort zone, initiate, and take that risk.
Amen.
So lie number 2 is a good friendship should not require much from me.
Yeah. That's yesterday. It was yesterday. Actually, a couple days ago.
Sometime in the recent past.
Yeah, I don't know. My
Life's
week
a
goes by.
blur.
Yeah, a couple days ago, I was going on a walk with one of my close friends, one of the guys that is in the life group, and one of the things he talked about, like, why is it so hard just to hang out sometimes?
Mm-hmm.
Why is it so hard, just to do things together? Like, it's so much easier for us to, again, just we just got done with work. I just want to relax, or we just got, or we're with our family, or we're with our spouse, we're with their family, So it's like, but man, it is hard.
Mm-hmm.
It is so hard to take the time to. I just think it's always a lot of work and the work that's there. I think it's supposed to be hard, especially when two believers are coming together. Man, one of the things is the enemy does not. When Jesus says we're 2, 3, we're 2 or 3 are there I am, right? And it's like, I think the enemy doesn't like that. So I think that's one of the ways spiritually that can be hard, So, but
yeah, I mean, there's real life factors in there, and there's things that we could say about, like, oh man, we have a kind of an unhealthy culture that says you need to work all the time. Or,
True.
if you got kids, there's the reality of like, man, there's pressure to have kids in so many different sports or other things like that. All those things kind of chip away at the ease or that space that oftentimes could be filled with friendship. But buying into the belief that, man, if this person was a really good friend, it wouldn't require much from me, I feel like that's just pure selfishness.
Oh.
You're saying, man, what good friendship is something that works well and is nice for me. In Jesus, right, and talks about friendship in a like totally the inverse of that. It says, what does good friendship looks like? It looks like laying down your life for the other person, which again, Jesus sets that example for us. He says, I'm going to lay down my life for you. And that's what good friendship looks like. It doesn't look like, oh, this is convenient for me.
Mm-hmm. I'm gonna serve you even when I don't want to serve you. Sometimes,
Yeah.
I'm gonna show up the times that I worked a 48-hour shift and I'm coming to you. But that laying down life, it's hard.
Yeah. Yes.
And I think you're right. It's easy to us to be. We think selfish is when we're selfish. It's the bigger things. No, no, no. I think we're selfish to the little things too. Of just like, no, I just want my own time. Nope, I can't do that. Like, no, Jesus didn't do that. Imagine
Yes.
Jesus doing that. Like, enough. I'm done with these guys. But he didn't.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And I think if if you're sitting in that space where you're like, man, I want more friendships, but I don't have time or energy to give to that. What you probably need to do is evaluate the rest of your life and say, am I buying into beliefs that are drawing me to give the best of my time and energy to things other than the relationships that God has called me into?
Here's what I'll say. Friendships are more important than you making money. It's more important than your jobs.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, all those things will flee. And even we will leave this world though too.
Yeah.
But what you're going to remember when you get old, what you're going to remember is the experiences that you had with people. And so many times you hear stories of like, man, the regret is, man, I wish I would have spent more time with my kid. I wish I was kind to that person. I wish I didn't say it this way. So many times you hear that. So people have a lot to do with it.
Yeah.
And I think, don't stop believing the lie of like, oh, I got to hustle. I got to grind. I got to make a lot of money. I got to have this gig. My kids have to look like this way. Those are all worldly things.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And it probably, if you're in that space, it probably calls for an evaluation of, do I have my priorities right? Or am I prioritizing things other than what God is calling me to prioritize?
Yeah, and you need friends because, man, having that perspective, someone that, what is it in for a friendship though? It's not like we're friends. Sometimes when we're married, there's something there for each other, right?
Yeah.
For friendship, it's like, no, I'm choosing you and you're just choosing me. What else is there?
Yeah.
So, but we all need it. And it's life-giving friendships God can really use to build someone up.
Totally.
So,
yeah, which that kind of leads to the third lie that we tend to believe is that, man, if I have a good friendship, it's going to be conflict-free. If we're really close friends, there's not going to be any disagreement and we're going to get along and it's going to be butterflies and rainbows and cookies and ice cream all the time.
There's this thing, this was said once. If there's no conflict in your friendships, one of you is hiding something or you guys are not real friends.
Yeah. Because the reality is that we are sinful human beings and we have desires for things. And if you put two people in a close relationship, those desires are going to bump up against each other. And that's where conflict comes. That doesn't mean one party is bad and the other party is good. Or sometimes that's the case. But oftentimes there's just, man, I had this desire and you had this desire. You wanted to go to Taco John's. I wanted to go to Taco Bell or whatever the conflict might be.
Yeah.
But if you truly care about someone, that means you're going to be invested enough to be able to enter that space and fight for what you care for. Now, obviously, Taco John's versus Taco Bell is probably the kind of thing that if you're really loving and serving your friends, you're going to say, dude, you pick the place this time.
Yeah.
And I'm going to sacrifice that. And your friends are like, no, you pick the place this time. And then you're going to have conflict over who's going to serve the other one. But it's right. The reality is there's going to be conflict if you're in a relationship with someone for any period of time.
It's going to be hard, and that's what's going to make you guys strong. Like those hard times that you guys go through together, those are the moments that you guys are going to be stronger, right?
Yeah.
But I also think sometimes we want to run away from that, right?
Yes.
We want to run away from that conflict. We want to run away from saying the hard thing because one, either we don't want to lose the person, two, we just don't want to deal with it. No. That's also not being a friend.
Yes.
So
yeah, and I think that's one of the biggest issues I see in the impulse in myself, and just kind of surveying in the space I work with college students and young adults. Probably the most common thing is people ditch a relationship the moment it gets difficult. So like, man, I have I've got this much conflict with this person. Just had a conversation with a gal this past Sunday, who was at a church while I was on a trip, and a friend of mine was preaching there, and this gal came up afterwards, and he had been talking about my friend who was preaching had been talking about the need to forgive, and that we're called to be ambassadors of reconciliation. And she came up to us and kind of told the story of how she had a friend who she was super close with in her like teen years, and then they had a fight, and they were like, we're done with each other. And this friend had just the day before, so Saturday, had contacted this girl's sister to get her contact information. And her sister had told her and was like, hey, I gave this gal your contact information. She's like, oh no, like, I don't want to talk to her. But God used the message that my friend preached to really be like, hey, you know, if you believe in Jesus, you're called to be someone who reconciles with this person that you had conflict with. But we live in a world where it's so easy just to kind of ditch out and say, well, this conflict, peace, we're done with this relationship, rather than sticking through and actually doing the hard work of navigating that tension.
Do you think a little bit of that is like, one, I think we normalize that of just ditching your friends and going on to the next group chat. And then
because you're supposed to do what feels good.
Yeah. And then what you find out at the end is like, actually, you're the problem.
Yeah.
That's what you find out at the end, right?
7 marriages later. Or whatever.
I think you are the problem there, you know?
Yeah.
But yet it's such a, man, it's a careless, and also like how you don't care about that person if you're easy. It's easy for you to just to leave and go on to the next friend.
Yeah.
You really don't care. You might have in a moment. You might when everything was going good, and when they were serving you, you cared about them a little bit. But as soon as something hard happens, no, I don't care. And what you're saying is, I don't care enough to continue this friendship. I don't care enough to deal with this conflict. I don't care enough that you think that, so I'm gonna go do my own thing.
Yeah.
I think that's just, again, pride. And
well, yeah. I mean, what it's saying is ultimately what my biggest priority is, me getting what I want. And what that means, what that friendship was, is that friendship was about you getting what you wanted. If you're willing to ditch it the moment things get difficult.
And you're going to find that out one of these days of like, man, you are the problem. Like conflict, friends, it's okay. Like conflict, it's hard, but man, like that's one of the ways God can really build us too, and can teach us something, right? And can teach us humility. Like, I think conflict can really teach people humility, right?
Totally.
So don't run away, run into it, and trust God, and like, don't do what you want to do. Lean on what He says that we ought to do, you know? So I'm scared of conflict. I hate conflict, but anytime I ran away from conflict, my life was a lot harder.
Yeah.
So
yeah, we probably need to do a whole episode or 2 or 3 on navigating conflict, because that's a huge one, man. But we're getting close to the end of our time here. So final lie that we believe. I'll recap the ones we touched on so far. So lie number 1 is that a good friendship should just happen.
Yeah.
Lie number 2 is a good friendship shouldn't require much from me. Lie number 3 is a good friendship is conflict free. And lie number 4 is that if it's really a good friendship, it's going to last a lifetime.
People, I don't know why I wanted to go straight to this, but people die in this world. We'll die, you know, and they'll leave. So enjoy those moments you have with them now, but also people move, right? That's totally different. People move. Yeah. Or maybe the Lord's calling them to go somewhere else, right? And you want to encourage them to go do that, especially if they're serving the Lord. You're not going to stop God from moving someone to somewhere else, right? But join them with that. It doesn't have to end because the physical side of it ended. I mean, you can still be friends of praying for each other, caring for each other. And we have technology. Praise God for that, right?
Yeah.
So friendships do end. And sometimes they end in a way that's out of your control. But the times that do end, there's another side to it too, I would say. Like, you know, the other person sins against you. They don't want to repent. God actually calls us out of those friendships.
Yeah,
He's like,
there's a time where you need to bring a friendship to an end.
Yeah, and those are hard. And I mean, don't believe this lie. Just also don't be scared of that too. Like, sometimes we think about that so much. Oh, is this gonna end? Is this gonna end? Like, and we're so afraid to end that we are not willing to, glorify God and within this friendship.
Yeah.
No. Like, You have a moment together, enjoy those moments together and live like that. It might not end, but if it does end, who's your ultimate friend?
Yeah.
Because if you're holding that friend so tight, maybe I think you're idolizing that friendship.
Yeah, totally. And that goes back to what we're talking about in the conflict thing. Maybe that you were using that friendship more for what you were getting out of it. I think of Ecclesiastes 3, right? That's the section of scripture where it says, there's a time for everything, a time to reap, a time to sow. And I don't remember where I first heard this idea. It's drawn from that passage, the idea that, man, there are seasons, there are some friendships that are for a season in life. And sometimes those seasons might just mean that like the friendship's going to look this way in one season, and things might change. That person might move, or like you might change your job or whatever. And then that friendship's going to need to look differently. But the reality is, very rarely are you going to have friendships that are going to last, that are going to stay the same throughout lifetime. So we need to be able to, hold those friendships in an open hand and trust God enough to say, I love what this friendship has been, but I'm not going to try to control that. And so, like, I have some of my best friends, man, and were friends I was really close with in middle school and high school, where we spent a ton of time together, sleepovers at each other's houses, going on road trips, all that kind of stuff. And now I talk with some of those guys 2 to 3 times a year. And I would say we're definitely still friends, but as much as I would love to have the quality of friendship or the type, like the same dynamics that we had when we were in high school, that's not possible. We live distant, we have kids, we're married, those things change. But that doesn't make those friendships any less valuable. But it would be a problem if I was trying to hold on to what that friendship was in high school now, 15, 20 years later.
Yeah, as you say that too, but sometimes people also look around like, oh, the grass is greener on that side.
Yeah.
Like, well, these guys have been friends forever. I want what they have.
Yeah.
And we idolize that idea. And then we put the pressure with our friends that we have now, and it just hurts that friendship. No. Like, what we're saying is just like, right, don't hold it too tight and just focus on growing together towards Jesus, really.
Yeah.
Really, that's what a real friend is. Someone that's going to point you more to him, and someone that loves him more than you too, because he can extend what he extends to them to you, really. So don't believe the lie that you can't make friends when you're older. You can.
Yeah.
It's just hard.
Yes.
It can be
takes more work.
Yep, and you will have conflict, but none of those things are bad. But those things can become bad if we make those things about us or those things like God, So
yeah. And I mean, out there, there's a whole lot more. We just listed kind of 4 lies that I think are super common that we buy into in regards to friendship. And here would be my kind of final encouragement for if you're watching this. We need to be intentional in everything, but particularly in friendship, of not just kind of assuming that the narratives or the beliefs that we've picked up are the right beliefs. So man, we need to take these things and say, all right, God, does this align with what you're saying? So let's get in God's word, get alone with Jesus in prayer, get with God's people in the community of the church, and let those things shape and reshape how you view the world, how you answer questions like what is friendship, and how you respond to the things that we're talking about here today. And ultimately, like we say almost every episode, go first, get out there, initiate, make a friend.
All right, again, thanks for saying that. I was just deep in listening to you there, but thank you for listening, friend. We love you. And go first, and we'll see you next week. Peace. Hey, friend, thanks for listening. We're all about equipping you to pursue real friendships. You were not created to be alone, because life is just better with real friends. Let's get started.